Hey, aloha mai kako. Welcome to the 22nd installment of the KO Center for Sustainable Island Food Systems Brown Bag Speaker Series. We want to mahalo everyone today as we kick off our new four-part mini-series on biocultural restoration in Hawaii, exploring agroforestry, ahupua'a, lo'ikalo, and lokoi'a as ʻāina-rooted pathways for long-term stewardship, resilience, and food system transformation. Before we begin, I just want to extend a special thanks to our presenters. We appreciate them taking the time to join us and share their Ike experience and on-the-ground perspectives. Each speaker here plays a distinct and important role in advancing agroforestry in Hawaii, and their work helps illuminate what it takes to sustain restoration across different models and realities. My name is Ioane, and today's session is about building shared understanding, grounded perspective, and stronger connection around agroforestry as a biocultural restoration pathway in Hawaii. You can scan the QR code on the current slide to access our center's website, and we'll also be dropping a link to that website and relevant links into the Zoom chat throughout today's session. In addition, a recording of today's webinar will be shared through our MailChimp newsletter following the event, along with key highlights and information about our upcoming brown bags. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, we'll also drop a link so you could do that in the chat as well. A little bit about the center. The KO Center for Sustainable Island Food Systems is an initiative of the University of Hawaii system, co-directed by Dr. Noa Lincoln and Dr. Albie Miles. Our mission is to uplift food system transformation statewide by supporting food security, ecological sustainability, education, policy, cross-sector collaboration, and community partnerships. And why we feel this matters now most, across Hawaii, efforts to restore abundance are growing, but long-term restoration takes time, relationship building, and systems that can hold both ecological and cultural responsibility. Agroforestry is one of those pathways. It can restore soil and water function, rebuild diversified food and medicine systems, and strengthen community resilience, while also requiring sustained stewardship, labor, land access, and long-term commitments. This session is designed to do two things really here. The first, helping you understand agroforestry in Hawaii through a biocultural restoration lens. And the second, helping you understand how agroforestry is practiced and sustained through different organizational models and real world practices. Some of our broader work at the KO Center, we engage also in applied research and policy analysis, community-based education and convenings, and cross-sector partnerships linking academia and practitioners. By convening voices from agriculture, policy, and community, we seek to strengthen Hawaii's path toward food sovereignty and an ecological balance. Today's format and topic, each presenter is going to share insights from their roles and experiences. Audience participation will take place through the Zoom Q&A feature, so please submit questions at any time. And again, today's topic is biocultural restoration in Hawaii, specifically on agroforestry. And today we're honored to welcome two leaders who will help ground this conversation from both an overview and an applied perspective. First up, we have Dr. Noa Lincoln, who's an associate professor, Indigenous Crops and Cropping Systems in the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, or CTAHR. And he's also a farmer, researcher, author, and an advocate. Noah's going to work to help us understand what agroforestry means in Hawaii today, why it matters for long-term restoration and resilience, some key principles and system elements that shape agroforestry design, and the place-based context and present-day realities impacting the work. His presentation will also serve to ground us in shared framing to carry through for the rest of this series. And then up next, we have Mark Hamamoto, founder and executive director of Mōhala Farms. Mark's going to share his perspective on agroforestry, offering on-the-ground insight into building viable agroforestry systems over time, and help us understand how this agroforestry intersects with production, operations, long-term viability, what it takes to sustain this work in real-world conditions, some challenges and opportunities that shape decision-making, and how stewardship and connection to ʻāina show up in practice within a business model, and together how these perspectives connect foundational understanding with applied experience. So with that, we're excited to begin today's conversation. Please join me in welcoming Noa Lincoln.
Ooh, that's a lot of stuff I'm supposed to cover.
Welcome, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ioane. Appreciate the chance to share. little bit about this topic today. Um, let me see. Uh, all right. You see the actual slide and not the things look
Yeah,
okay?
no, it's kind of
See the whole like presenter view? Oh,
yeah.
So
Yeah, there
there
we
we
go.
go.
okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks again for the opportunity to come share. It's definitely a topic that's like really dear to the heart of the work that we do. And so, yeah, definitely excited to share a little bit about some of the work we're doing in Hawaii, really around restoring agroforestry systems across the state. Um, so yeah, just to start, kind of get everyone on the same page. I think we hear the term a lot these days about biocultural work. And I think there are a lot of different interpretations to it. This is one definition that I really like. But essentially it's a place-based approach that links ecological health with human culture. So integrating traditional ecological knowledge while achieving additional goals around our communities. So strengthening identity, improving our food sovereignty, and really at the core of it is rebuilding the reciprocal relationship between people and the landscape. Um, and I think that's really the core of it. When we think about our food systems today, our food systems are often distant and anonymous, right? You go to a store or you go to a restaurant and food is just there. And I think a core part of this concept of biocultural agriculture is really restoring that relationship, between people and food and our food systems. Um, and so, yeah, there's several, I think, key components to the kind of biocultural perspective. One is that it really does emphasize traditional ecological knowledge and cultural perspectives in terms of our agricultural systems and how we're building them. And so when we start talking about, biocultural restoration, especially in Hawaii, Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian cultural perspectives, practices, and protocols are going to have a central role in all of that work. Um, and just to give a couple quick examples, to show, that it can really span a wide range of activities. Um, One that comes to mind is Paepaeoheia. So, a nonprofit approach that is really seeking to restore, these traditional components of our landscape that were integral to our traditional food production. And so people may be familiar, but Heia was one of the largest fish ponds in the state. And over a long time period, Paepaeoheia really built a following around restoring this fish pond into a productive state. And so they're active, they're producing, but the food component of Heia is really I would say not their greatest achievement in terms of uh, what they've accomplished. And so, yes, they're producing food now out of a fish pond that had been abandoned and defunct for many decades. Um, but what they've really achieved more than the food production, right, is the sense of community and identity and knowledge that they've built around the fish pond. So through the efforts at Heia, I mean, they've inspired thousands of people to better understand the history of food and food production in Hawaii. They've had many, many thousands of volunteers come and start to engage with food and engage in landscape restoration in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. And that leads to building relationships and becoming better connected, right, to our communities and to our places. And all of these things start to build, I think, not only an awareness, but a shared sense of purpose in the community, around wanting to genuinely bring back ecological health and productivity to our landscapes. And that translates not just to Hāʻia itself, but then these are people who might go out and submit testimony at our legislature to support other initiatives, or they may go back to their home community and get involved in other efforts there to restore these systems. Um, and so I think Paipahi is a great example of a, nonprofit approach that is, yes, producing food and restoring these food systems, but I think has achieved, a much broader set of goals through that effort. And something, a little bit at the other end of the spectrum might be a place like Mōhala Farms that really has a strong emphasis on food production, has a, kind of traditionally they were a for-profit, farm that really emphasized, the productivity of the landscape as part of their guiding mission. But through their approach and through their activities of growing food, they have always kept in mind the community impact that their organization could have as well. And through their engagement of youth in Hawaiian culture, that they have not only, done a tremendous amount of workforce development and food production, but they've created cascading effects in their workers that have translated to, impacts that extend beyond just creating good organic food. But they've changed, the eating habits of people who have come through their programs, and they've created a very strong sense of community. And a lot of the students who have gone through Ma'o, as interns and as workers, just learning culture through farming, have gone on to be strong advocates within our communities for other projects that extend out beyond the farm. And so, I think the biocultural restoration can take a lot of forms. It can be a form that really emphasizes the cultural component. It can be forms that really emphasize community. It can be forms that really emphasize the agriculture or the food itself. But in all the cases, there is this blended goals and blended outputs, both of food production, but also of cultural and community restoration at the same time. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about, kind of how I got into really the work of agroforestry restoration. Um, and I think everyone's probably familiar with this poster, the Ahupua'a poster, especially if you went through the public school system here in Hawaii. Fourth grade, Hawaiian cultural studies. We all got exposed to this poster and got told that this was traditional Hawaiian agriculture. The classic kind of river valley, diverting the river through a series of lo'i. And, when I got out of undergrad, little over 20 years ago, I started working as an educator at the Amy Greenwell Garden. And this poster was front and center in the visitor center when you walk in, again, as a representation of traditional Hawaiian agriculture. Um, and the only problem is that garden was located in South Kona. where there's not a river, anywhere on that side of the island. And this whole framing or perspective of what it meant to do traditional agriculture was really not relevant to that place where I was born and raised, and where I was then working as an educator. And so, when we look at traditional ag in Kona, this is a drawing from 1827, kind of depicting the Kona landscape. Um, this is more what was going on. And in particular, in this picture, you can see kind of right down the center, this line of trees was a huge breadfruit belt, agroforestry belt that cut across the Kona landscape. And that's kind of what's now the Kona coffee belt in Kona. And I became really, really interested in this system. Uh, in at the time I was really interested in, like, why was it right where it was? When you look at this picture, you can kind of see how it cuts off at the bottom, cuts off at the top, and I became fascinated with why is the belt where it was. um but as we started to dig into it more, and find out more about it, I became really questioning of why we don't do more agroforestry in Hawaii. And so about 11 years ago, we were able to, on Kamehameha School's land, start to restore a section of this traditional kalaulu system, and start to bring back a small portion of it, and understand this system better. And we learned that um, why this belt was where it was is because it was uniquely suited to the ecology of that landscape. There's a lot of very young, rocky soils in Kona. And this breadfruit belt really, really excels even in this kind of low rainfall band and really young soils. Um, and as we started bringing this back, the other part of the goal was to have a working reference um, for especially the youth of Kona to see what was happening, what their ancestors were doing. Because again, when you look at that Ahupua'a poster, that really wasn't representative of Kona. And you have kids in Kona like being taught, oh yeah, this is traditional Hawaiian ag. You divert a river, you make lo'i, and that's completely irrelevant to them and their understanding of their history and what their great grandfathers were doing, in Kona, only 100 years ago. And so, yeah, as we kind of started restoring this section of the Kalaulu, it became a really great place to start to bring youth, start to bring teachers, and share with them uh, a place that could both inform them of kind of history and identity of what it meant to be a traditional farmer in Kona, um, and at the same time also demonstrate that under a modern framework, these agroforestry systems can be extremely productive, sustainable ways to produce food in today's food system as well. And so over the past 11 years now, that's kind of what we've done at this site, is serve both to kind of be a demonstration, education, engagement site, but at the same time be a working, productive farm. Um, and so, yeah, these are just some pictures of our farm. It's basically a open breadfruit canopy system. So you have these well-spaced breadfruit trees throughout the property. It's about 4 acres. We have about 85 breadfruit trees. And then in between the breadfruit trees, where you have this light penetration, we grow a whole range of other traditional crops, kalo, mai'a, ava, olena, um, and yeah. And so over the 12 years, we've used zero inputs. We do absolutely no amendments to the soil, or we don't irrigate. And in that 12 years, we've tracked, for instance, soil moisture. We've tracked pest prevalence. We've tracked soil carbon and soil health. And we've compared that to our neighboring coffee farms over the last, again, 12 years. And we've just watched as this system over time has just become more and more productive. As we've introduced carbon into the system, we've started to build organic soils. And as those break down and turn over, that really enhances the nutrient cycling. And we've gone from this kind of, really kind of, it was a abandoned coffee farm when we got it. And we gone from this just kind of sparse, weedy system to something that's become really, really robust and highly productive. And our main markets are to the Hawaii Ulu Producers Cooperative. And so our little, 4-acre farm, we submitted about 3 or 4% of the Ulu Co-op's breadfruit intake last year. And so even though it was kind of created as a restoration project, it was created as a place to showcase traditional Hawaiian agroforestry. It's become a very productive parcel that's contributing significantly to our, modern food supply. Um, and yeah, the last thing I'll say about this project is that when we talk about biocultural restoration, we talk a lot about the physical components about it. We often talk about, the practices, or we talk about like the ahupua'a ridge to reef components of restoration. But less often do we talk about that traditional agriculture was situated in a very different social structure. And today's right socioeconomics that we're in, are very profit driven. It's very individualistic, right? It's a very Western framework for how we think about managing lands. And so when we were talking about, how to structure our organization, we eventually structured it as a cooperative. And so we are a worker-owned co-op. And what that means is anyone who comes and works on the farm has an opportunity to become an equal owner in the project. And we chose this structure because, in today's modern business world, like we felt this was as close as we could get to the kind of traditional social structure, where, on a ʻili parcel, you worked, and by working the ʻili, you gained kuleana, right? You gained rights to the land and to its production. And that was kind of our mindset in structuring the organization this way, is that it kind of mirrored that traditional social system of basically your rights to land and your rights to the production was based on your inputs, how much you worked right on that land. And that's kind of how the worker co-op structure happens. Um, Ooh, what's an ugly slide? But yeah, we've done a lot of farmer trainings and teacher trainings. Again, we've seen really strong ecological outcomes compared to our neighboring farms. And yeah, this has just been the project that kind of got me really into agroforestry and understanding um, how amazing and productive it can be. Um, and so, yeah, that kind of just led to, our model, I guess, or our framework of how we think about the biocultural restoration. So for us, at the center of it, it is the production. It is like the actual farming. But in everything we do, we try to consider how do we impact Kaya Ulu, right? How do we impact our community? How do we impact Aina Momona or our environmental health and well-being? And how do we impact Na'awau or our kind of cultural traditions? And so this is really a kind of our decision-making framework to judge ourselves about how we're doing in terms of really restoring these biocultural relationships. Um, and so, yeah, I just want to pivot a little bit. You know, since we're really focused in on agroforestry, I really want to highlight that traditionally, probably about half of all agriculture in Hawaii was agroforestry. And although we emphasize a lot the lo'i, and more recently people have started emphasizing the mala, the dryland field systems, huge components of our landscape were agroforestry systems. Um, and this is true not just in Hawaii, but virtually every Polynesian island. In fact, most Polynesian islands were dominantly agroforestry systems and tree-based agriculture. And that's something I think we've really forgotten in Hawaii. And so to me, almost any agroforestry efforts in the state kind of starts to become biocultural restoration because it was such a huge part of our traditional cultivation here in the islands. And in particular, when we look at where agroforestry was practiced, it was practiced in landscapes that were generally too rocky, too infertile, too salty, or too steep to do your kind of tuber cultivation of kalo and sweet potato. And when you look across the state, there's a lot of lands that meet that designation. Um, and so uh, I was going to say that traditional agroforestry took a lot of different forms. So it wasn't a one size fits all approach, but you saw a lot of different methods, right, of agroforestry cultivation. So at one end, you kind of have like the full-on food forest, right, where they're generally unmanaged. You have big wild trees, breadfruit, mountain apple, kukui, and you basically just let them go. And as you need food, you go in there and harvest. And so it's a really low input system that is kind of always there, and it's always, able to provide when you need it. And coming down through the spectrum, you had Swidden systems. So, for instance, Hamakua Coast on the Big Island was famous for the Pakukui system, where there was kukui forests, and our ancestors would go down, cut down patches of kukui, open up the forest, let in light, mulch all that kukui, and then plant kalo in there for a short time. And then you had areas that were more like intensively managed orchards, like the Kalaulu system in Kona. So a broad range of activities that kind of all fall under agroforestry. And I think that's important because we see that today as people are bringing agroforestry systems back into production. We see a bunch of different approaches and a bunch of different forms. And I think that's actually appropriate in terms of representing what our ancestors were doing as well. Um, And so, yeah, just to wrap up, wanted to share a kind of spectrum of agroforestry practices that we're involved in one way or the other, just to kind of give a quick taste of the types of activities that are happening across the state. Um, and so one project that we're really kind of honored to be part of is was um, preserving the lineages of the ancient breadfruit trees of Lahaina. And so Lahaina traditionally was a famous breadfruit belt, Malauulu Olele. The whole town of Lahaina was said to sit in the shade of the breadfruit trees. And when the fires came through a few years ago, um, all of the old remnant trees, there were 7 trees in Lahaina that were known to date back to the ancient agroforestry. All of them were burned. And so 2 weeks after the fire, we were allowed to go into the burn zone to kind of rescue the lineages of these trees and save them to propagate them with the idea that these trees can serve to restore agroforestry of Lahaina into the future. And so I think this kind of demonstrates that really preserving that historical element of biocultural restoration and bringing these histories forward into the present, so that we always remember that the status quo is not it's not how things have always been, and it's not how things always have to be. But using these elements of biocultural restoration to tell stories that help us envision better possible futures for some of our areas. Um, Kind of moving up the scale a little bit is the Amy Greenwell Ethnobotanical Garden. So we helped form a community-based nonprofit a few years ago and purchased the garden and turned it into a community forest. And so, this 15-acre garden has kind of become a space to do community agroforestry. And we've really kind of shifted the emphasis of the organization towards food production and engaging people through food, um, and serve as a repository for, again, really kind of building community and engagement around traditional agroforestry. Uh, Another project on Oahu that Ioane, our host, has been a critical component of is Ku'ukani so out on Office of Hawaiian Affairs lands surrounding the birthstones of Ku'ukani. We've been engaged in a 8-year effort to start to bring back traditional agroforestry to those lands, with the primary goal really being the community engagement piece. So leveraging agroforestry as a way to get people to reconnect to land, reconnect to place, and reconnect to identity. Um, Kind of coming a little bit more towards the food production side, we've been working on Molokai for several years with the Aina Momona organization. And they have, as part of their master plan, one of their 3 pillars is really is food production and maintaining food security for Molokai. So we've helped them develop a agroforestry plan that's kind of multifunctional, both in terms of food production. So they've planted a large ulu orchard, other fruit trees. We're working on restoring some of their traditional coconut groves, all with the kind of emphasis of generating food security for their communities. And so they've started producing a tremendous amount of food out of those restored areas. That's starting to really be a core feeding program for their area. And then we've also been working with them to leverage agroforestry to try to mitigate the erosional impacts into their fish pond. So a century of poor cattle management, and then now the wild deer have caused major erosional issues for them. And so leveraging agroforestry as a way to really enhance that ecosystem restoration. At the same time, you're producing food has been a core mission of this project. Um, we also have a new project we're just starting, working with several Hawaiian homestead associations on the Big Island to help them develop community-based agroforestry systems. And so this project again is really around strengthening community relationships through food production and through trees, and but also kind of developing that food security component for the individual communities. So there's 4 different community sites that we're just launching the establishment of these community agroforestry systems. And yeah, so kind of very similar in the sense of merging community development and food security. And then at the very food-centric end of the spectrum is a project we have with OK Farms. So they were a very conventional tropical tree farm, and they produce basically monoculture production of lychee and longan, rambutan. And we approached them several years ago around doing a demonstration, diversified agroforestry with traditional crops. And so we worked with them to do a 5-acre demonstration plot that is really focused on not only bringing back our traditional crops into the agroforestry, but around having it as a demonstration place for farmers and community members to come see what's possible. And this has been so successful for them, both in terms of production and in terms of community relations, that they've actually expanded it another 5 acres on their own. And so we're trying to work, across the spectrum from, individual trees and communities, all the way up to commercial farms to really demonstrate, the multiple roles and outcomes you can have through traditional agroforestry. And so, yeah, I'll leave you guys with Olelo no Eau, Laulau Akuoi, Ka Ulu Ka Vekiu, Ikialo no Ka Ulu Ahala. So, you reach for the breadfruit at the top, but you miss the one right in front of you. And I think, when we think about agriculture today, there's a lot of emphasis on all these new cutting edge technologies and, we got to do, massive hydroponic greenhouses, or we got to do controlled climate agriculture. And yet I think there's these solutions right in front of us that have been around for millennia, such as agroforestry that can solve a lot of the issues that we see in our food system today, but yet we kind of look past it as a solution. And so I thought this is a very relevant Olelo no Eau to end on today. So yeah, thank you for the time to share, and I will pass it back to you, Ioane. Mahalo.
Right on. Mahalo, Noah. I think you did hit them all. That was a lot. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just want to remind our audience real quick, if you have questions, hit the Q&A feature and ask away. And now we'll hear from Mark Hamamoto at Mōhala Farms. I think you're on mute still, Mark. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear
Yeah, we
me?
got you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Aloha, everyone. Aloha Noa, aloha Ioane. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to share about our work. And aloha to everybody that is either listening in now, tuning in now, or who might be tuning in later digitally. I'm going to try to do a share screen and see if I can pull up something. This works. Select a screen, entire screen. So sorry about this.
No worries. Take your time, Mark.
Okay, this might work. You got it?
It
Can
looks
you
like
see
it's
the farm?
there we go. We got you.
You got it?
Yep. All good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so anyway, just in it, perfect. Introduction to myself. Yeah, I'm Mark Hamamoto. I started Mōhala Farms a little over 20 years ago. My background in farming, I mean, I didn't come through any kind of formal educational program with farming, actually through more the nonprofits. And I got my start working, oops, what happened? Sorry about that. Oh, yeah. How do I go back? See
I
if
think
that
if you
works.
just find the image you wanted to start off with, and then you can scroll through them after you get that one clicked up.
There they are. I gotta use my finger on my screen. Okay. Oh, shucks. I'm not sure why it's
Yeah,
not
just
opening up when I'm clicking on it. Oh, okay. A little bit better, getting close. Shucks. Okay. All right. Not perfect, but you guys can see that.
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to do a shout out because that's where I got my start to Hawaiʻi o Makaha. So that is a farm that is in Makaha Valley. It's right next to Makaha Elementary School. It was on unused land owned by the Catholic Church. And the person that's on the left, that is Gigi, who is originally from Italy. He was a Catholic priest, and he was when I can spare you. There's a long story involved, but when he got to Hawaii, Sister Anna, who was a legendary nun that was working on the west side, she took Gigi out there right soon after he got established at Sacred Hearts Church in Waianae. Told him we need to do something with this land. And a week later, he had moved there into a broken down Quonset hut, and then basically stayed there for the next 43 years of his life. He just left a couple of years ago, and he's actually back now in Makaha. But he took that 5 acres of land and built it into this very wonderful community-based organization that I had the privilege of being able to work at from 1995 to 2000. Um, and it has done a lot of educational work, especially with the elementary school, with Makaha Elementary, with a lot of other schools all throughout Oahu. Can't even begin to list all the different programs. And one thing that's been really interesting and amazing to see is how the programs grow out of the different needs that are there in the community and the different opportunities that are there. They are still there. This is 47 years or so, I think, after they first got started. But that's where I guess, got introduced to farming and to like community-based farming. So I wanted to do something similar Um, let's see if I can do this. I'm trying to now somehow trying to go back to the document. Okay. Okay. All right. So fast forward about 25 years, I was looking for land ever since I left Hawaiʻi in 2000, and was attracted to the Wailua area. And through the grapevine, was able to find this land that was just beginning to be sold in this area. Used to be owned by Castle and Cook and Dole Foods for over 100 years for sugarcane. And if you see that road that is right there next to the farm, that road, if you were to go, I guess, towards the distance, that is the road that goes to Thompson's Corner. So anybody that's familiar with the North Shore, if you come down the winding road past Schofield, there's that blinking light that's over the road. It's a four-way stop. If you were to take a left, that's heading towards the mountains. That brings you over here. Before that was a road, it was a walking path. You can't see, but where that road is, if you were to continue to come into the foreground another 500 feet, you would run into Kaukonahua Stream. And Kaukonahua Stream is what has carved out that big gulch that's right to the left as you're coming down that winding road, and which was a stream that everybody was afraid was potentially going to be inundated with water if the reservoir in Wahiawa, the dam, broke. I'm up high enough away from it that I am actually right on the boundary of the evacuation zone, on the safe side. But that's a defining feature, is that stream, and we're right up against the base of the Waianae Mountains. These are kuleana lots that are right over here. And it's a testament, a legacy to the history of agriculture and farming and living in this area that goes back at least 500 years. It's right along the stream, so that's their fresh water supply. And that road, that now a paved road, used to be the walking path that people would go to go down to the ocean. And so this land that was once owned by and lived on for hundreds of years, when the Mahele took place, these people actually did register their land. And so that is why, amidst all the big hundreds, if not thousands of acres of farmland that's under one TMK, one tax map key, you have these smaller individual parcels. So I feel extremely fortunate, and also feel that sense of kuleana, because this was land that was cared for generations and generations and generations. So I think there's about 20 of these plots that are over here. This farm, Mōhala Farms, is 6 acres. And it is, like, you could probably call it a kipuka. So it is even though all of this land is zone agriculture, very few people are farming. There are some people that have planted some trees, some fruit trees, some, quite a number of them, which provides a good side income and is using the land appropriately. But as is the case throughout a lot of places on the North Shore and the rest of Hawaii, there's a lot of agricultural land that is not being used for agriculture. So that's a whole big issue in terms of zoning and enforcement. But I feel, like I said, a sense of responsibility, and something really that I'm very grateful for, to have this land that was once used for so many generations. Um, Looking on this land, I'm going to use my cursor so you can sort of follow along. So right there, it's over the hale. So that was built not too long ago. And there's going to be some noise over here. There's a roll-off container that's just being delivered. So hopefully that won't interrupt too much. But so this is the hale. This is our processing area. Since this picture has been taken, this area here is now our kitchen. And so there's the first ulu trees that I planted was this one here on this side of the hale and this one here. There's another one here. There's another one here. And there are more that have been planted along this, the boundaries of the property. There are also back here, these are all, there's ulu trees back over here, a whole line. And let's see. So those are the breadfruit trees. Way in the back of the farm, pass over here in this last corner, there's an orchard where we primarily grow citrus, guava, starfruit, some avocados. And then the other main feature, and what I'll probably want to be sharing the most about, is our Gliricidia. When I was invited to this to talk about agroforestry, the ulu came first to mind because we probably have at least 30 trees now. And then the use of Gliricidia on our farm as a really important resource. And where my cursor is, there's a stand over here. And then all along this boundary of the property, along this fence line, that's about 1,000 feet. I think there's about, how many trees that are planted? Close to 100, maybe 80 of these Gliricidia trees. Let's see. In terms of, I really like the whole biocultural aspect of what farms are for, and it truly can be way more than just the growth of food to be able to be sold. So obviously, not just growing the food, but utilizing it, preparing it, sharing it, eating it. Learning how to use it in so many different ways, and a whole part of the community building and the training process. That's an important part. The hale in a couple of different ways, not just the wood and the lao, the leaf that is used for making the hale, but then obviously once it has been finished and created, it's an incredible space that is used for all kinds of different activities that we use it for, community gatherings, dinners, talk story times, all those sort of things, cultural practices. And with that, the ironwood was collected up in Pupukea. A lot of the lolu palm was collected in our area, trees that I used to have over here, all in weed circle, and then around different parts of the island, collecting the lolu. That is another wonderful aspect of agroforestry that is there, is growing material that can be used for things like thatching or building. Unfortunately, with CRB, we've had all kinds of problems with that. With the trees that I had, they are all gone now. Let's see if this will work. Okay, so people there who are participating in the building. Nice picture of the hale at night being used for dinner. Another picture of the hale being used for a gathering. And then getting into other practices, this is inside the hale. This is a piece of vauke. We've worked with a lot of different groups, and this is one group. This is Kumu Aiai Bello, that was a Hawaiian language teacher at Wailua Intermediate and High School. But she's also a kapa practitioner and an Oli Kumu. And so we have been growing Vauke here for the last close to 10 years. And so this is a demonstration project that she was doing of actually taking the bark off and going through the whole process of using it to make kapa. Hang on just a second.
You are.
Yes, I am.
Oh, I've been trying to call you.
I'm on a Zoom call. I gotta find.
Yeah. I've
Can,
been sleeping inside.
It's a working
can you
farmer.
just drop it off?
Always
and
hard
put
at
it
work.
over there and
Always
just drop
stuff
it
going
off?
on. Huh?
Next to the,
Yes, you can.
right next to
Yeah.
it. I'll pull it over.
Yeah. You can back up and then drop. You can back up over here because it's solid over here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can back up and then just drop it off, and we'll take care of it. No,
No.
no. Drop it off over here. If you
You
want.
want me to back up? Which way you want me to put it though? Right next to this.
Yeah,
Right next to it.
Yeah, next
Okay,
to
okay.
it.
That's what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up and reverse back.
Yeah, you can, or you can just. This is a little more solid.
Yeah.
You want it?
I gotta get it in an angle. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. So sorry. I was afraid that was gonna happen.
No worries.
Let's see. So this is a picture of the ulu tree that you can just sort of see. Okay, so getting into the Gliricidia, this is something that I actually, I first collected the seeds from the Hark Research Station off Kunia Road when I was at Hawaiʻi. So that was like 30 years ago. Planted trees over there and then collected the seeds at Hawaiʻi to bring over here. And it was the very first thing I ever did plant on the site. And the purpose for that is to be able to use all of the biomass, all of those nutrient-rich leaves for mulching and for compost. This is the section I was showing you that goes all along the long border of my property. And just to give a little bit of scale, so it's a good 20-25 feet tall of growth. And it's beautiful and it's very prolific in its growth. This picture is probably already after it's been pruned multiple times. That's another angle. So when we went through the process of using it, well, let me stop just to say, propagation can take place either from cuttings or from the seed. And it's famous worldwide as a plant for forage, for fodder for animals, for windbreak, for shade. They use the bark in different parts of the world to read to kill rats by using the bark and fermenting it. So it can be propagated from the cuttings, but it also can be propagated from seeds, which I have done. So one of the issues, of course, is that when you plant it, you've got to take care of it and maintain it and use it. And if you don't use it quickly enough, it can get out of hand. Another thing about it is, I have planted it close to some of my crops, and the roots can be very aggressive. So the roots can spread out. It is spread out into our compost piles, going for that nutrients, and also, of course, in the field. So I don't really plant it near my fields anymore. It's much better to be used around the borders and other areas. But it grows really fast, so you need to cut it down, keep it coppiced or pruned. It is constantly growing. This is the action after it was all cut back. And then, obviously you also need a chipper to use it. You can use this really smaller, more slender branches or twigs and just use it directly as a mulch to be putting around plants. That's very nice. And then those plants and the nutrients that are there in the leaves break down. But once you're getting it into the bigger branches, the more woody branches, you're going to have to use a chipper, and which is another investment if you're doing this. More of the action.
Kalamai, Mark, we hit
Yes.
our 1 hour mark. We gotta wrap up. If you want to put out a final thought.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I guess I'll just say this is the final product, is making it into compost or putting it in mulch. And it's a great resource and we use it all the time. And mahalo for having me in this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Noah. Thank you to all of our viewers. Really appreciate everybody's time, and just want to wish everyone a great rest of the day and huge mahalos.
Yeah, thank you. Aloha.